I mean, let's just talk about building up the torso. This isn't my construction. This is a few things I've a plot put together. But first thing you need to know is if you're going to do anything of decency with the the rib cage, is you need to learn how to draw it properly. And the way to draw it properly is to draw it with a few certain rules in mind. One is that there's this kind of oval opening here. Then there's the sternum, and then the distance between the sternum and the bottom of the rib cage are about the same. And then the torso goes down and like this. Sorry, the torso. The rib cage goes forward and down, and then it goes down and forward. And the reason this is important because it's very consistent. Oh yeah, and then the learn to find the line. This line is actually really important. Learn to where the kind of approximation of the bottom of the rib cage is. This is important to keep in mind because when you actually shade, like if you do enough light drawing, you'll notice that whenever you're looking at someone from the back, you got the shoulder blades, and you'll very quickly learn that if there's light above on someone, this whole area gets shaded pretty consistently, and then it goes back to the butt. It's good to keep that in mind because it's shaped like this. So you got, and then the same thing with the breast area. You'll notice that whenever there's breasts and you do shading, it kind of goes past the breast, and there's usually a really hot highlight here. Let's see if I can just paint in the highlight. So let's see, you got your breast, and you'll notice that when you, let's see if I can get a better brush to paint with. So usually when you're shading stuff on the torso, if you do enough studying or you look at enough artists, you'll notice that there's always a very strong highlight right here. And that's because it's the part that's facing the most, one second. It's the part that's facing most towards where the light source would normally be, which is, above, like, normal, where the ceiling light or sunlight. So you'll always see a pretty hot highlight right here on when anyone draws breast, because it's just a good place to do it. It also is just a kind of a freebie to sell that area. And it's that kind of observation that's kind of important to kind of keep putting in mind, that it's not just, when you observe something, you're not just trying to say like, oh, that's what that looks like, but you're trying to build more neurological pathways by connecting it to other kinds of things that are similar. So it's good to make aha moments where you're like, oh, it's like that because torso shaped like this, and because often most light sources are from this angle. That's the kind of thing I always kind of push for when I'm teaching people, is to not just see it for what it is, but see it for all the pieces in place. But anyway, the way to properly draw a torso is to have this kind of oval, this pointed egg shape. Make enough room for the neck hole, and then learn to draw this. So you definitely want to learn to draw this good enough. This kind of shape. There's a few examples of this online, but if you're going to learn to do that, at least give yourself the benefit, don't make it too narrow. Just learn to get these approximations in play, and then spine will be right here. And then you got your flower pot. So it's good to kind of keep that in mind, to get at least this is your first step. Secondly, your second step is to really remember that pretty much, you can touch yourself, you can touch your own body right now, and feel around. If you got enough muscle, or if you got enough tit meat, you'll notice that the pectorals go kind of lower. Like the nipples aren't here, often the nipples will be up here. but your pectorals pretty much go almost all the way to the opening of your rib cage, like this at the bottom of your sternum. They may not be visible down here, but the muscle builds up, goes all the way down to there, plunges into this area. So that's your second step, is to realize that, you know, this is the muscle mass of the pectoral. You know, it might not be, the pectoral might not just be visible all the way down here, but that's where it connects for the majority of people. So that's step 2, is to learn to draw this line across. These 3 lines, these are your pretty much your grounding lines. So you're going to have this line at the bottom, this line here, and this line here, and they should, I mean, if they're not going in perspective, but they should be pretty parallel. And then you're kind of just going to build everything. Like if you're going to build a breast, I'm going to try to draw in the least cancelable way as possible, but you're going to just be building it like you're attaching a water balloon to it, like you're nailing a water balloon to this shape right here. And then everything kind of comes from there. I mean, obviously it's not exactly like that, but you know what I mean? Like that relationship is its own thing. But a lot of it is just trying to draw a subtle overlap that isn't like freakish. Because as soon as a breast has any kind of heft, it's like 50% of it is in the overlap, is like overlapping and resting on the chest. So it's like you're having to contend with the fact that this is the breast is going to be just basically leaning against something. It's not free floating. So for instance, give me a second here. So for instance, so that's another case to keep in mind. And then a third thing that I've been really strict about myself doing is to always make sure that the nipples are pointing from basically I have this in a tutorial too, from the spine area. So you got your spine. This applies more than to just like this. So from the top, you know, if you got the torso, sorry, that would be like something like this, you know, and then the nipples should, regardless of the way they're pointing, if they're being squeezed together, if they're separated, the best place to put them, the nipple is at the, draw a line from the center of the spine out. I don't think anyone can argue I haven't figured out how to draw some sweet titties. So I feel like I'm saying this from a position of authority. But that's where I start from. But what I used to do is only content myself with that angle. But I've learned also to start concerning myself with the way the nipples are, where the nipples, to really kind of, I'm going to try to draw this without drawing in it. But the idea is here, I'll draw an example, a smaller, I'll copy this and make a few copies and I'll explain what I'm talking about here. Okay. So what we have here, what I'm going to explain is essentially, I'm going to delete that. What I'm going to explain here is what the way I used to put fixed nipples on breasts really had no sense or logic. But now I do the same thing from kind of like a center point where, here, let's do small, medium, and large. Okay. And then this would probably be pointing towards me. This is why it's beneficial, by the way, to use a spine, because now I know exactly where the nipple points. Because if I'm looking at the spine like this, I can kind of, and I know that the nipple should be around here, I can see that it's almost exactly pointing towards me, which is a hard thing to do, to wrap your head around if you're not used to it. Anyway, so the idea is that if a breast, I'm going to need another color. So the idea is that you're drawing breasts, Um, you know, or I'm going to draw approximations as geometry as simple as possible so I can still post this on YouTube. But the idea is that you don't you don't move this up or down. What you do is you accommodate the size. So as things get bigger, they're still coming from kind of the same angle, but they're being turned up. They're being turned up because there's more mass. So as more mass comes out, things are things are just pointing up more because there's more mass at the bottom. But really, those shapes are planted in the same place. And what you're doing is you're just kind of picturing yourself like, if you draw a X on a balloon and you keep blowing, the X doesn't move around in the balloon. It stays in the same place, but it distorts and kind of like can shift direction based on where the mass is going in that balloon. If you're putting like, maybe not blowing it, but putting like sand in there or whatever. So this idea that you just kind of make sure you kind of just lock that to the one place, and then what happens is it will just get it as the mass increases, it'll just kind of normally tug upwards visually because there's just more bottom mass, but to also accommodate the fact that there's just more mass at the bottom, it'll start pointing up. Just out of the fact that there's just more room up there than to be pulled down, because nipples don't really point downwards too much unless there's the breast is made that way. Let's just say this, the ones I like to draw tend to have the nipple kind of locked into this area, and everything kind of grows out to accommodate that. It's not to say that's how they all look. There's plenty of situations where but nipples point in different directions. But definitely, this is something I've come to put in my brain when I'm working, specifically because if you want to keeping things, and if you want to keep things consistent and be able to self-correct, the idea of where these things are locked onto becomes really important for consistency's sake. Especially the idea of like the plane of direction, where creating a simple plane to build things off of, because it's a lot easier to keep building ovals off of an oval, right? Sorry, out of an ellipse. So if you got an ellipse, you get an ellipse, and you keep building ellipses, things kind of like become a lot easier to construct if you can kind of keeping that ellipse facing the right way, and you have a good idea of which way that ellipse should be facing. And that's really helped me a lot for just generally a lot of things. Just force myself to orient things based on a kind of consistent set of rules. Just keep building. I wonder how much trouble I'm going to get this. It's literally the worst shit is on YouTube. Doesn't get flagged. I get flagged for all sorts of shit all the time. It pisses me off. I'm trying to teach people shit. I'm going to get flagged for this, but who cares? Anyway, point is, this idea of like forcing orientation. So here, for example, I'm going to just show you something. Like, let's say I drew something and it doesn't feel right or it's not consistent, and I were to follow a rule I defined for myself by saying, the nipple should point from the sternum area or a little bit above. Like I've decided that that's where that point generates. Well, now I have a reliable way of building a face, so I'm going to say, okay, it should go like that. So now I can just I can draw a face like this and be like, okay, and then build backwards and keep everything consistent. But it really comes down to like, really figuring out really committing to an orientation. Really committing to an orientation, because for a long time, what I would do is I would just like, pick a shape that looks good and be like, well, that's what I'm going to use. But I find that if you're going to like do something, it's best to. Same thing with a dong. When I draw a dong now, I really make sure things have an orientation, have like a flat elliptical surface to start from, because then everything else kind of falls into place after that, and it kind of takes away the guesswork. It kind of informs me of like this. So like as I work these down, I don't have to say I don't visually actually add these. Once I have it, I just kind of I sense it out. But here I have an idea that it should be like that or whatever. But it's just to kind of inform me of the general shape. Um, is it a perfect solution? No, I mean, it's never going to be a perfect solution, but it is important. I feel like as time's gone by, deciding and committing to an object's kind of orientation and committing to that orientation, it might not be, even if it's not anatomically correct, it tends to present a nicer shape, um, a nicer shape because it kind of seems to follow an unspoken rule to the person looking. And because it's kind of following you can make something that makes no sense kind of still have an aesthetic, because there's like an unspoken path towards that completed image that kind of reads through the drawing. Otherwise, the issue you get is quite often, it's the same thing with hatching. If someone hatches and they hatch, one way and then another way, and then kind of like, and then it comes to another object and they hatch a different way. It can sometimes work, but it'll be luck. But if you want to do like, you can have kind of crazy hatching. If you pick a point and then you consistently apply that line, it doesn't have to be all in line, but because now I've kind of there's a secret point of convergence here. There's all these lines converge and have like its own little unspoken rule as to why they're kind of doing that. And I find that selling anatomy often quite is just not about being accurate as much as committing to a series of kind of concepts, unspoken concepts that kind of tie all the ideas together. This is why you quite often you see me draw this shape, after I've drawn, I'll draw an arm, like here, so I'll show you, I'll draw an arm. And that arm's fine, but if I draw this, it really kind of sells to me that this arm is this way, and it's pointing like that. And it just helps inform me for the rest of the drawing. So it's just kind of building little key points to help instruct me on how things should be coming together. They're like little tiny reminders or keystones or points of reference, like a converging line. So you quite often see me draw these shapes, and they're not anything except just, they're not consistent, and they're not meant to do anything except just remind me, like, oh yeah, okay, this is going this way, this is facing this way. There's other ways to do this. There's other ways to construct. A lot of people just kind of do the grid, but it's not really a construction line, because I'm drawing these after I draw. Like, quite often I find myself, I'll draw a shape and there's really nothing integrally wrong with it. But as I'm drawing, I'm going to add just like little landmarks to reinforce. Like, so for instance, this shape is fine, but if I add like this and this, now I know specifically, I've just kind of strengthened the idea of this shape and what it's doing in a way that just more solidifies the idea of what this image is. So it's just a gentle commitment to what you've already established, without having to commit to actually like fully finishing the illustrations. That you're like, okay, now I got to draw the face, and helps you kind of see things more and more in 3D visual space. Anyway, sorry, it's kind of bouncing all over the place. Right, so that's the thing, and that's what I actually did quite often, as you said. So I'm going to repeat this. I tend to end up abandoning my internal rules in the interest of discovering something that looks real or right. And that's been my motto for forever. And I'm finding myself that there really needs to be two ways to approach this. There's your fun draw time where you don't pay attention to any rules, they don't apply at all. And then there's, hats on, I'm a real big boy artist mode where your intent is to create a substructure of reliable systems that will give you consistent results. And that, if things start going wacky, you just lean back onto that. You're like, okay, like for instance, I could just draw, a character like this, start drawing hips and stuff, and not use any rules. But at some point, I'll be like, okay, something's not working, and it's really important for you to be able to, okay, it's not working. Why is it not working? And then come back and be like, okay, I'm gonna do all the lines I know should exist that I've taught myself that these are things I know to be true. I know that this is supposed to be like this, okay, and I know the spine will be here, okay, and now I'm having problems with these areas, so now, instead of control-zing or scribble doodling my way through, I'm just going to take these pre-established systems that I've learned to teach myself that are hard to mess up, that I can do consistently, and then I build from that. And then I create like a simple substructure. Yeah, I used to do this, by the way, guys, but now I always do this. And the reason I always do this, because you can always, if you do this, you know where the ears are on both sides, and then you can just draw like this to get where the chin's supposed to be, and it's a lot easier to start building that, the rest around. This is my opinion. Used to be that I draw just a tube, and then I can already tell it's the chin's too far, so I can actually kind of eyeball, because I know that this should be more like this. Whereas when I used to draw a tube, then I have to figure where that tube goes, but now I just do this, and I know where both ears are going to be, and I can just draw everything around that and nail it a lot faster. And then what I do from that on, I know this is super ADHD all over the place, but then what I do is I have this kind of bridge effect where it's like, this is where not the lats, but where the shoulder muscles are, and I kind of just build everything around that. But yeah, so, if it comes down to I can't figure out what's going on, then you just kind of sometimes have to back off and be like, okay, I'm going to use these systems that I've learned that are like hard to, these are good old reliable standards of systems that I know won't really break. And then you can kind of build what you're trying to build. Use your measuring. Obviously this head's too big, so you just gotta scale it down, because a bit like that, I don't know. And so forth. And then go back to your like big brain mode. And then build all these things. And then once you've got all this in place, like I know this is supposed to connect here, so when this comes here, I can come here and build all this. And then you can always just come in and be like, okay, I got all this boring stuff down, I'm to just blur this, and then you just blur the hell out of it. Like so, and you can just like, okay, I know this is mostly correct, or has some semblance of logic, or has some structures, conceptual structures, and then you can go back to being freaky deaky with your ideas. But no, you're not like poking in the darkness. You have at least some sense of, you can start applying your whimsical art vibe back onto the shape you've developed, without kind of locking it into that stiff system. And be like a creative lad. How does it? That goes like this, right? So it's not. I mean, you guys saw me draw this now. It's not like this takes too long. It's not. It's not that. And I'm not particularly like I'm not classically trained illustrator that can draw all the anatomy in the world, but this is definitely serviceable for something. So you have this versus what I used to do is you draw the shape and then you scribble, you control Z until things kind of fall into place. And that just breeds frustration and anxiety. You get kind of exhausted from that process. And I've said this before, and I will keep repeating this. Anyone who learns to draw with Control Z will learn to draw an image that is 90% the wrong lines, and ultimately makes you feel bad. Now, maybe you don't feel bad, but your psyche is secretly getting drained, being like, this is a drawing that is technically 90% the wrong line every fucking time. And it's way funner, and as I found as I've improved this year, it's way funner to draw a drawing and then have 90% of your lines be right. It's way more gratifying, it's way more fulfilling to just nail all your lines one after the other and be like, this is mostly all me. There's no, like, it feels good. It feels good to finish a thing, never having abused the Control Z or having to, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just, it is a serious crutch. And over time, it has a psychological mental drain on your artistic process because your drawings just become mostly wrong. And through sheer, like, live, die, repeat hacking, it becomes right. Like, it doesn't build your confidence in a way that just over time being just more confident with your line does. It doesn't increase the joy factor, as it just kind of really feeds into the frustration factor. And I'm saying this as a person who's abused Control Z for 20 years. So it's not like I'm coming here and telling you guys, oh, just draw good. Like, I get it. It's very hard. I've never been one of those people who can just, like, most people, a lot of the artists I knew growing up were just like nailing all their shapes with one line and stuff. And that was very inaccessible to me, but there is a path towards earning that. And it's just not clear how to do it for everyone. It's not the same for everyone. I can shed light over the next few months how I approached it and how I got there. But, I've tried to do it for, 2017, I spent a lot of time drawing on paper and trying to, like, get to that feeling. But it took another 5 years and a lot of experimenting to get to a point where I'm a lot more confident with what I'm doing in a way that just had never been accessible to me. And a lot of that came down to just, as I said, my aphantasia and learning to, like, tap into my mind. And then also another thing came to me was to stop pigeonholing my art into the things I wish I could draw and start learning to draw things I'm good at drawing just innately, and then leaning into the art and the skills I learned from that back into the things I wish I could draw good. I'm naturally more gifted at doing, backgrounds and, inanimate objects, mechanical things. I'm just more capable of that. I don't know if it's, some aspect of, undiagnosed autism or whatever. But organic shapes, especially, and literally faces, have always been the most difficult for me. Like, trying to evoke emotion and stuff, and it's only something I've been able to access recently. And a lot of it comes down to just, like, what I've discovered is, like, I need to just find things that are just kind of fun to draw, or shapes. Quite often, what I found is there's just shapes I like drawing. There's lines I like drawing, and what I do is I just start drawing those lines I like, and then I build off of, I try to build ideas and things off of those shapes I like drawing. And then it's just kind of fun to draw, Find the super S that of your art, the thing you like to actually do for funsies. But yeah, like, definitely kind of forcing myself into this, like, only spending time trying to improve, anatomy, trying to draw the hottest lads and ladies, trying to learn how to draw, the very, the things I wanted to draw versus leaning into things that I'm more naturally gifted at, and then taking the desire to draw and the want as a as the inspiration point to just keep consistent with illustrating. Because nothing will make you more frustrated with drawing than the fact that you're not drawing. But I can do something now which I couldn't do even last year, which is like, if I had free time to do it and I didn't have any prior responsibilities, I didn't have like money I needed to make or income, whatever. I could easily do 12 hours of drawing in a sketchbook. That would not be a problem. I would not have a problem traveling around, going to coffee shops, spending 2 hours per coffee shop, and drawing 2 hours at a time, and filling up a sketchbook in a few days. And then wanting to do that, not like forcing myself like it's medicine, but that's like a thing I'd want. And that's never been the case for me. Not for a dozen years have I ever actually wanted that, and that's kind of a slowly earned thing. And that's earned because I learned to slowly want to draw by focusing more on exploratory things. Learning to lean in on, being inspired by other artists. By, sometimes I don't know what to draw, and I'll literally I'll crack open Pinterest, and I'll just do a quick scan under like, oh yeah, like I wanted to learn how to do like hatching better. And sometimes I'll do a few drawings of what I'm seeing, and then I'll just go like, okay, I got it. Now I'm going to try my own thing. But learning to inspire yourself, just like really the easiest way, in a simple, quick way, is super integral. And we've said it in the Discord pretty often, and it's been repeated. But if you want to get good at art, if you want to improve at art, you have to learn to wake up, and all you want to do is you want to run down and draw. You want to run down to your coffee table and draw. And if you can't get to that point, then you have to ask yourself if you really want to draw. Because why fill your life up with one of the most frustrating and taxing hobbies on the planet that requires the most constant focus? And also, there's a whole industry trying to trivialize it. Why fill your life up with that when there's like other hobbies that might be more suitable and you might be more interested in? It is really worth asking yourself that question, like, often. And if your answer can be like, I want to draw because that's just what I do. I'm just always drawing. And even like, for instance, myself, I can't answer that question now. I was like, why do you draw every day? It's like, I draw every day because I want to do that, because I actually want to draw every day. I just want to do that process. I enjoy the process. It's comforting to me now. Allows my mind to kind of relax, or I like seeing my sketchbook get full of drawings, or I like these drawings and I don't post them or anything. That I just look at my sketchbook and I go, that's some cool drawings. Those are for me. You know what I mean? Like, it becomes almost trivial answer. It becomes almost trivial question to answer when it's no longer a problem to draw. Once it becomes easy, once it's something you want to do, you don't even actually know how to answer it, because it's just like, I want to draw, because that's just what I want to do. Like, it's you don't even have to really give an excuse. Yeah, no, listen, I used to have the problem with sketchbooks being nothing but half done drawings, half the pages I hate. And for me, what a lot of it came down to is just like, I decided my sketchbook was just where I'm going to explore using brushes. And then one of the benefits I have now, one of the things I do now to benefit for me a lot, is that I just make a decision for what the page is going to be. A lot of sketchbooks you'll see, like, sorry, I don't mean to, I'm kind of getting into doodle mode here. What I do is I'll open up a page. Sorry, this is going up track. This is why I said, like, I just kind of have to do this because I can't really pick ideas. So what I'll do is I'll open up a page now, and I won't be a hard decision to make. I'll just be like, the first thing I draw, if I draw like if I draw like a goofy vampire, I'm drawing a sketch. I'm drawing in a drawing of a sketch, but it's just so stupid. If I draw a goofy vampire, then I'll just commit to that. Instead of being like, okay, and then an arm here and then a cup here, I'll be like, all right, let's make a page. Let's just do a bunch of goofy vampires. And I think what's really helped me a lot recently is to commit to an idea long enough to glean something from it. It used to be that it'd be just all this like trying to improve, get the perfect line, do a bunch of hatching. It used to be the cart before the horse, where I'm like applying skills to meaningless images. And now what it is that the images have some meaning to me, and then I'm using that as a testing ground for some skills, if that makes any sense. So I'll be like, oh, cool. Then I'll have you like, okay, I want to do like a really kind of more stylistic, and then use like, a thick brush and heavy shadows, maybe apply more, a magnolia style color. So it becomes more about focusing on the subject matter and being consistent on an idea and committing to an idea, even if it's like a fleeting concept. And then it's more like there's a more fertile ground to experiment, because at least you have a consistent concept or idea. And that's always been my issue, is that I've always just been in the pursuit of, it's always been a pursuit of skills with no real purpose beyond like, oh, I've gained, XYZ skill. I can do this. And it's just like, that just always left me feeling like, well, okay, then what? Then what? But now it's just the point of drawing is to find subjects that are interesting to me, so that I can learn to apply various skill, better communicate just like what I want out of that. So this is what my sketchbook process is now. Is just like, I just drew this haphazardly, and then I just commit to it. And then you kind of come up with a bunch of ideas, commit, doodle it out. And if you like it enough, you crack open the next page and you keep kind of pumping out that idea. And if you're like, I'm tapped out on this idea, then you just open up the page and be like, oh yeah, I really wanted to like, so let's say, let's open up this page to the next page over here. This is another page, by the way, guys. And I'll be like, I really want to like learn how I have a problem with feet. And then you could just do the next page and be like, this is what I think feet are. And then you can kind of draw a crap version. And then you'd be like, actually, but whenever I draw feet, they're a little wrong. So I'm going to draw them how I normally draw them, and then you'll draw them out real quick. And then you'll be like, okay, I'm going to draw them. This page is going to be just me not trying to show something cool, just seeing where the depths of my knowledge are. And then you go like, okay, then you go like, all right, you do a few things, and then you open up your Pinterest, or you open up your, whatever, and you find some, references. You're like, actually, I'm kind of wrong on this. It actually should look like this. I've talked about this in the previous, thing, and on my Twitch, where I believe the majority of learning comes from this correction phase. So you do something, and then you find the actual. It's like doing the same math problems and always getting a close enough answer, but never learning to get the right answer, if that makes any sense. It's like, 4 plus 5 isn't 10, but it's close to that. And if you never correct yourself, you're always going to hit 10, because 10 is easier than 9. But the reality is that, at some point you're going to need to correct. And I believe that for me, whenever I'm in that correction phase, it's where I learn what I'm learning sticks the most. The one thing I'm going to show you, like here, actually, I used to draw feet way more tall. I've learned that feet are pretty flat. Most people's feet are extremely flat. And I've learned that through this process, where I was just like constantly drawing kind of like feet were always like a tall triangle and like this. And this isn't a foot. Most feet are like pancakes with like, it's kind of crazy. Even shoes. If you look at like Converse sneakers, A precursor, almost just like a flat pancake with just a little bit, you know, just a little bit of an extrusion, and everything else is pulled off from that. But anyway, this is the idea: is that you know you commit to an idea per page, so that when you're revisiting this or when you're doing it, at least your mind can kind of settle in um, on conceptually. I think as a person with ADHD and and as I said, I actually believe quite a lot of artists have ADHD. Um, I believe that the biggest problem is kind of like learning to play fair with your multiple interests and all the things you want to do. And one of those ways is you don't fight your constant desire to explore new ideas as much as you learn to rein them in enough that you can get something done with it. So for me, it's like I want to try all these different things, but what I've decided is the best way to do that is to at least put up a little bit of a velvet, not a velvet roll, like order off my process a little bit, so that at least I there's a little bit of commitment to one idea before I deviate and start doing some other wacky stuff. And that's kind of helped me learn to be more patient. This is a bad foot. Uh, that's allowed me to be way more patient with what I'm doing. To the point where now it's like I used to want to get good at hatching, but I hated the having to wait through hatching something. Like I liked how hatching looked, but I didn't like the time hatching took to do it. Does that make any sense? Um, and it's through this process where I've learned to just like actually like I like hatching and I don't care if it looks good now. And then my hatching's improved dramatically just because I've gotten to a point where I just do a lot of hatching because I want to do hatching. And I'm no longer trying to focus on getting the lines in the right place. Um, because I've made the process of hatching enjoyable to the extent that I just do it so much that it's become kind of a second-hand nature sort of deal for me. So like I said, it's kind of like the cart before the horse, where you're trying to acquire skill with no real concern for the subject matter. But if you learn to draw subject matter that interests you, then using that as your a fertile bed, the fertile grounds to apply all these various ideas you're interested in becomes uh, a lot easier and a lot more fruitful, in my opinion. So yeah. Anyway, I think that's what we're going to cover for today. I think that's about covers the rambling nonsense. So today it's going to be about a little bit about lips, then about breasts, and then talking about sketchbook. Oh, and then talking about anatomical placements and directions and creating landmarks and that sort of stuff, and then talking about sketchbooks. A very normal mix of ideas. Totally, totally cool. Do you guys have any questions before I wrap up? Oh, and I forgot to record all this. So I have to repeat this. So this is completely lost to time. Whoops. That's fine. Hey guys, you got to hang out. I'm a fucking moron. Next time, we'll do this again. Nope. What I'll do is tomorrow we'll do this again and I'll just keep this open. Sorry about that. We'll talk about this again. I don't know if I can repeat this again. It's going to be annoying. Sorry about that. I'll try to guys. Next time, remind me to fucking save. I mean, I'm gonna tell you guys, I've been drawing for 30 years, and I've had the most improvement in the last year. So it can happen at different points. It really is about refitting the way your brain works. So we're gonna do this again tomorrow. I'll try to cover the same thing. I'll discuss like I never talked about it. I might actually just quit everything on like a slight opacity and then draw on it like I never drew it. Okay, this never happened. Let's talk about this tomorrow, but just guys, remind me to fucking record this so I'm not talking into the fucking ether and it's just not usable because I'm really trying to get these videos out. So let's do this tomorrow. I appreciate you guys coming in. But yeah, so let's do it again. Let's cover what I covered again, and then I'll post it and have you get more on. And then the way I see it is that if I can just kind of keep this open and free and not overthink how this should happen, then I could probably do this forever. And post them, and then at some point I can double back and like hire an editor and get them to like condense this into something reasonable.